Madam Clerk?
Yes, we are, Mayor.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council for Monday, November 16th to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boki,
Present.
Councilmember Brandstetter,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Moss has been excused, Councilmember Simpson,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Whalen,
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is proclamations and presentations. We'd hope to have a representative of the Nisqually tribe with us to accept this first proclamation. Unfortunately, he had to cancel. But in honor of Indigenous Peoples Month, and given the strong history in our area, both in Nisqually and Stillicum people, we'd like to make this proclamation. Whereas the Nisqually and Stillicum people were the first inhabitants of what is now the city of Lakewood, using the prairie lands as a ready source of food and a gathering place. And whereas Indigenous people's contributions are woven deeply into our city's rich tapestry, and whereas Indigenous people have influenced every stage of our city's development, and whereas Indigenous people have played a vital role in our community and their contributions have enhanced the prosperity and greatness of the city today. And whereas the city acknowledges that every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy into making history, the history which led to this moment. And whereas the city would like to recognize that we are on the lands of the Nisqually and Stillicum people and acknowledge the history of dispossession that allowed for the growth of our community. And whereas the city offers respect to the Nisqually and Stillicum people and their elders, past, present, and emerging. And whereas Indigenous people have participated in every major U.S. military encounter from the Revolutionary War to recent conflicts in the Middle East, serving at a higher rate in proportion to their population than any other ethnic group. And whereas Indigenous people are a testament to the deep importance of culture and vibrancy of traditions passed down through generations. And whereas our community reaffirms its commitment to respect and preserve the traditions and culture and to honor the unique heritage of our first inhabitants. And whereas the city recognizes our responsibility to value all people and are committed to equitably serving all people in our diverse community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lakewood City Council does hereby proclaim November 2020 as Native American Heritage Month in the city of Lakewood and calls upon all citizens to commemorate this month with appropriate programs and activities. Proclaimed the 16th day of November 2020, Don Anderson, Mayor. And if there's any council member who wishes to add a comment, please raise your hand and indicate so. I think that we have in some ways made history by probably being the first elected government body to meet with the leadership of the Nisqually Indian Nation in history, at least since the treaty times. And building our relationship with them has been, I think, an important item of progress in our city. Mr. Whalen.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the great relationship we enjoy currently with the Nisqually, with their investment in the city, and certainly with our cultural connections. Just wanted to point out, it's my understanding that our Parks Director, Mary Dodsworth, is working with the Nisqually folks, including our connection here with regard to art. I think we were going to have Hanford McLeod join us tonight, but I understand, Mr. City Manager, that we're going to try to do something unique and interesting at the new plaza. I call it the plaza area in Fort Stillicum Park, where the new restroom area and the swing will be located, as a means of providing an informational, educational opportunity about the Nisqually tribe. Is that correct?
That is correct, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, that'll be great. So maybe we can look forward to an unveiling and an opportunity to gather together in the spring when the whole COVID thing hopefully subsides, and enjoy another opportunity to enrich our relationship.
And I would note that at the this week's meeting of the South Sound Military Communities Partnership, which some of you attended, virtual meeting, of course, both Willie Frank from the Tribal Council and David Trout from Fisheries and Nisqually Tribe gave excellent presentations. And also, maybe Mr. Caulfield, you can bring the council up to speed on the interest that the folks in Thurston County are finally showing with respect to the I-5 project through the Nisqually Delta in an effort to at least plan the replacement before the river takes out the freeway.
Certainly, Mayor. Well, Lakewood, with its SSMCP hat on, has been working with its partners in support of the Nisqually tribe in developing a legislative solution to address essentially the fact that I-5 is acting as a dam right down there in the mouth of the Nisqually River. I'm sorry, in the Nisqually Delta, that in turn is causing the Nisqually River to bow, and to bow significantly. And all of that ultimately, from a transportation standpoint, could result in the water actually flooding I-5 and shutting down I-5, both north and south. And many of us will remember what happened down in the Chehalis Centralia area a number of years ago when that happened. And so that is a clear and present danger that exists in this corridor. But more importantly for the Nisqually tribe, it's really about preserving and protecting the environment as it relates to the treaty rights and their livelihood, particularly as it relates to the salmon and the fisheries that they have. And so the proposed solution is to essentially tear down that portion of I-5 and rebuild it so that the waters can flow back and forth between the Puget Sound and the Delta and the Nisqually River. Really, it was the folks in Pierce County that were kind of pushing this. It's upwards of a $14.2 billion initiative. However, given the importance of this, we felt it was critical that some strong leadership be provided there in support of the Nisqually tribe. And in summary, we've been able to bring along our partners, as well as now working and updating the various state legislatures, not just in Pierce and Thurston County, but throughout the state, of the importance of this corridor. And again, not just from a transportation perspective, but also from an environmental and sustainability one, and again, particularly as it relates to the Nisquallys. So it's been a phenomenal partnership working with them on this. And just last week, the Thurston County Regional Council came to the decision that this too is something that they want to support. So when the state legislature has their discussions on another transportation package, we are hoping and quite frankly expecting that this project be included somewhere in the discussion. Because again, that flooding could occur anytime now. It's not something, it's not a what if, it's just it's a matter of when. But again, more importantly, the environmental and sustainability issues as it relates to the salmon and the Nisqually's way of life. And if you do have a chance, I think Bill Adamson sent out a link to the EOC meeting last week, and it's very worthwhile to listen to Mr. Franks and as well as David Trout. I thought his presentation was absolutely outstanding, and it is worth a listening to. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I certainly want to echo yours and the city manager's comments about the importance of the fact that we are being supportive of the Nisquallies in the need that they have brought to the forefront within the Nisqually Delta, and that we're going to be with them in working towards a solution in the long term going forward. I'd also want to note that the partnership with Nisqually has been a important part of our public safety program, in that they have provided contract jail services for us, and that in fact that they have been were early to move to online arraignments and other things that help to make us more efficient, absorbing some of that expense themselves. In what was a little bit more of a teeth pulling exercise with the Pierce County Jail as compared to them. So there, and with their local economic activity, they are not just part of our history, but they are a strong part of our presence and future.
We'll unmute. Now we'll move to public comment. This is when any member of the public may make a comment on matters of pertinence to the city, whether or not they're on the agenda. Public comments are accepted by mail, email, or by live virtual comment. Send comments in advance by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk, at 6000 Main Street Southwest, Lakewood, Washington, at 98499, or B. Schumacher at cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting have been provided to the City Council electronically. Madam Clerk, have any comments been submitted prior to the meeting?
Mayor Anderson, we received no public comments prior to this evening's meeting.
But that doesn't prohibit you from making comment. You can make a virtual comment on a live public comment by joining the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling by telephone to 1-253-215-8782 and entering participant ID 868-7263-2373, or visiting zoom.us and entering participant ID 868-7263-2373, which are both of those contact informations are on the screen. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name or other chosen identifier and use the raised hand feature to be called upon. When you are unmuted, please provide your name and city residence, such as Linda Farmer, Lakewood, Washington. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Outside of public comments, all attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise your hand for the duration of the meeting. You will not be acknowledged and your microphone will remain muted except for the 3 minutes you are allotted when you're called upon. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed up in the waiting room to attend? I see Mr. Dennis Haugen is there. So Mr. Haugen, when you're up here, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Dennis Haugen, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Looking at the election results, it doesn't appear that you moved forward at all. Starting from the top. Riots and the confidence that you've got protection. Your governor, Inslee, many days after the riot had started, was pretending he didn't even know what was going on, which comparable to competent governors in other states who were already acting in many cases successfully stopped them very quickly. Next one down, Denny Heck, who while the hordes of people were coming across the border, was talking to CNN and MSNBC and pretending he didn't notice anything. And then you go down to your three legislatures, Marie Leavitt and Marie Levitt, Kirby, and Monica Morgan, who all voted for sanctuary state, which enables the drug trade and vicious hornets and everything else. There's a reason for a legal door. It's to protect the citizens of the United States. So it doesn't appear that you've moved forward and you're very much in danger. But on the top, really top side of the ticket, Trump, you know, the interesting thing about Trump is his followers like him. They like his policy, and they like the way he implements his policy in a way that gives so many people tangible benefits. On the other hand, many people who supported Biden also like Trump's policy, but they voted for Biden because they didn't like Trump. That bodes for an interesting fight in the future. We know that Democrats, and we've got many Democrats, politicians that have been elected that have encouraged violence. So maybe now for a while we'll see Democrats beating each other over the head as they begin to fight, because after all, if you're going to take away Trump, you got to take away all of his huge pile of accomplishments. And people get mad when you take away their benefits, when you take away their $2 gasoline, when you take care of all of the other benefits, start taking them away. So maybe we'll see Democrats fighting Democrats, and we can just sit back and watch for a while and figure out what's going on. Anyway, thank you. Bye.
Madam Clerk, I don't see anyone else signed in on Zoom. Is there anyone else who's signed in to make public comment?
Mayor Anderson, no one else has raised their virtual hand to provide public comments this evening.
Is there anyone else out there right now who wants to make public comment? I'll wait a second. A moment. Seeing none, I declare public comment closed. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of October 26, 2020. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of November 2nd, 2020. C, motion number 2020-62, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Horwath Law, PLLC, for public defender and related services from January 1, 2021 through December 31, 2025. D, motion number 2020-63, authorizing the execution of a grant agreement with Washington State Emergency Management in the amount of $50,877 for the emergency management performance. E, motion number 2020-64, authorizing the execution of an employment agreement with John J. Caulfield for city manager services. F, motion number 2020-65, approving the 2021 human service funding allocations. G, motion number 2020-66, approving the 2020 lodging tax funding allocations. H, motion number 2020-67, approving the 2020 accounts receivable write-offs. I, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting minutes of August 5th, 2020. And 2, Planning Commission meeting minutes of October 21st, 2020.
Thank you. Is there any item which any member of the council wishes to have removed from the consent agenda? Seeing no hand raised, I will entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Whalen, that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Whalen.
Even though I didn't remove it from the consent agenda, I just want to make a public comment about the annual review we performed the city manager, just to reemphasize that he has performed admirably in 2019, received a laudable review from the city council. and we're appreciative for his service to the city.
Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries. We now move to the regular agenda. First item is ordinance number 743. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 743, adopting the 2019 and 2020 biennial budget.
For this, we have Ms. Kraus.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item was reviewed with you on October 26th and November 2nd. There has been no changes. So that concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions for Ms. Kraus? I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Whalen, seconded by Ms. Farmer, that we adopt ordinance number 743, the 2019-2020 biennial budget. Excuse me.
Right.
It's actually rephrased wrong. Amendment.
Right. That was going to be my clarifying question to Ms. Kraus. Is the ordinance, the way it's framed, is it's adopting the 1920 biennial budget. We did that a few years ago. This would be adopting the revised 2019-2020 biennial budget, given the ending fund balances. Isn't that correct?
Yes, this is for the 2020 year-end budget adjustment as stated on the memo.
Right.
So it's, yeah. With that clarification, is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Sorry, Mr. Branstetter, I didn't see your hand. I have had a problem here with this. Do you have a question?
Mr. Mayor, I would just had the same observation as the deputy mayor. And so I was wondering in that we've been using the adopting and amending phrase, and I was wondering whether the actual language is in the ordinance, not in all the supporting memos and the agenda. If the city attorney is confident that the language doesn't have a conflict in it between adopting and amending anywhere.
If I may speak, all of the items as it relates to the budget adjustment in the agenda bill, request for council action, the ordinance all reflects the 2020 budget. Where there is clarification that is needed, where the council is seeing this is on the motion as read by the city clerk, but everything else is reflecting the 2020 budget adjustment.
And we did reflect that it was an amendment before we voted, so.
Yeah.
All right, we then move to ordinance number 744. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 744, making a declaration of substantial need for purposes of setting the limit factor for the property tax levy for 2021.
And for this, we also have Ms. Kraus.
So similar to the year-end budget adjustment, this item has been reviewed with the city council and the public hearing. So tonight is the adoption, and there have been no changes since it was originally presented.
Are there any questions for Ms. Kraus? Entertain a motion on ordinance number 744.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Bulkey, that we adopt ordinance number 744. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Whalen.
just a point of clarification and perhaps an item just to throw out for the good of the order. So I understand the need for us to pass and create a declaration of substantial need to set the tax limit to the point where it is. My only thought is I'm concerned about doing that a little bit given our current economic situation with many other individuals and businesses having challenges financially due to COVID. And in the ordinance, you know, we're chatting about the need to adopt and make this declaration of substantial need given our own budgeting, which includes increases in pay, and I understand that for the city, but I am concerned given our economic circumstances, the kind of message this may send. So I throw it out for the good of the order. I'll likely support it, but I just want to make the point for purposes of discussion. See if there's anyone else that's likewise concerned.
Right. I'd entertain a motion on ordinance number 744.
It's been moved and seconded.
It
That's
has,
correct.
okay.
Could I respond to the deputy mayor, please?
It's time for discussion. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor makes a good point, and I'm wondering, and my question is to him, would you want us to perhaps take another look at this before we go through with this vote?
Well, this is the time for discussion on the issue. And so if there's an opportunity for folks to raise any concerns or questions they may have, this is the time to do it because we do have a motion and a second on the table.
We could also rescind, could we not? We haven't voted.
Yeah, I would ask Ms. Kraus to explain the practical impact of this. It's my understanding that given the limitations on local taxation with respect to the city's portion of the property tax, that this is a lose it or use it 1% increase, which is below the rate of inflation. So even when put together with the rising property values, while property taxes themselves may exceed the rate of inflation, or their increase may exceed the rate of inflation at times, this rarely results in the city's share of the property taxes increasing at more than the rate of inflation, as opposed to special levies, bond issues, school taxes, and the like, increasing the total property tax bill. I appreciate Ms. Krause's explanation of it.
So I just want to make sure that I understand what it is that you're asking for, Mayor. Are you asking me for what the implication would be if we did not take the 1% and did something less?
Well, I think it's more what this really means in the context of an increase in property taxes.
Okay, let me go to another document. We have two items here that is talking about the property tax levy as well as the substantial need ordinance. So I just want to have a moment to just flip over to ordinance number 745. So okay.
745 is based on the full 1%, whereas the choice is the inflation factor of 0.60152 or the full 1%. Isn't that right?
Yes, really the options that you have is to go with the 0.6%, the 1%, or no increase at all. And I don't have the document in this packet because I reviewed it the last two sessions with the city council. So I am just pulling up the document from the previous discussion so that I can give you some numbers.
And I can step in here. I think that the increase is like 40 some odd $1,000, but a 6-year impact I think you had in the documentation would be $466,000 over a 6-year period if we didn't adopt the declaration of substantial need, raising the tax to full 1%. That's what I understand to be the impact.
Yes, that is correct.
Sorry, Mr. Boki, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
Mr. Barnstetter and then Mr. Bulkey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I understand the reason for the deputy mayor feeling we should discuss this, that I had that concern going in when I heard that the inflation indicator was less than 1%, which that, you know, we in most years, this is an action that has not been necessary because other than for the anomalies and things of this year, it has normally been well over 1. And when we were restricted to the 1%, we were just did the 1%, knowing we weren't even keeping up.
Right.
This is a unique year where it's a 0.6, and I tend to think that it's a 0.6 not because the costs of the city, which has had to work to help the community and the economy deal through COVID issues, and that the way that we are doing it in looking ahead to even having our next biennial budget is to make some exceptions to things that we would normally do, even if we take the 1%, such as not investing in some of our fleet things and our funds, and of not being fully compliant with our reserves and our you know, this is a step towards staying as close in step as possible to our financial policies that have served us in good state. And I think that it's either in the 6th or 7th whereas of the ordinance. I think that it would be important in any ordinance of this sort is to make the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that that as worded in that whereas, that we do make the case. I would tell you that this is in contrast to Sound Transit, which has a proposed action very similar to this, of where they have very similar whereases in the action that their board is set to consider, except that it lacks that paragraph that makes the case. It's merely they're just doing one that says we need the money, so we're going to declare this emergency. I think that we the way that our ordinance is worded, it shows that we've done some due diligence in the consideration of it. And that keeping the city on a sound fiscal thing is going to help all the other boats in the city do likewise.
Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of points. The implicit price deflator is just one way to take a look at inflation. The CPI has actually been in excess of 1%, depending on what time period you use. I know my day job, we use July 1st to June 30th, and it was right around 1%. It was a little bit higher than the implicit price deflator. I'd also note that 1% is, as Councilmember Branstetter has mentioned, typically 1% doesn't catch the inflation rate in any given year. We're typically higher. So when it's a 2% year, we're losing 1% a year. I'd also point out that $44,000 is 73 cents per person.
Right.
And, so for those families out there who I guess would save, family of four would save $3 or less than $3, but we would have to immediately, if we didn't pass this, we'd immediately have to turn around and propose a cut to the budget. So, I would look to the folks that, and I guess it would have to be a person. So, there are consequences for us. And so I would caution that always you're losing anyway at 1% most years. To lose even more, we've agreed to collective bargaining agreements that are in excess of this amount. So we've kind of made our bed here.
Right. Mr. Whalen again.
No, just last comment. No, I appreciate the discussion, and the reason for me bringing it up was to have some discussion, because I agree that the cost of the extra 44,000 spread among the residents of the city itself is not, a huge lift. My concern in these times is to indicate that a municipality has substantial need when we're looking, among other things, at labor costs increasing with annual step increases from 2 to 6%, depending on the labor group, on top of cost of living adjustments, when many residents of the city will never even see an increase of the cost of living with their family's take-home pay, given the impacts of COVID. So I just want to express the fact that it's good to have this discussion, because it's important to realize the sensitivity of any particular impact, albeit minor, on the residents of the city. That said, I'm going to support it for the reasons many of you have articulated, but I just think it's important for us to have these discussions and to recognize that there are impacts to what we do. One way or the other, there are impacts, so it's important to weigh them.
Right. Don't see any other hands. I'm going to call for the questions. Will all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We now move to ordinance number 745, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 745 relating to ad valorem property tax, establishing the amount to be raised in 2021 by taxation on the assessed valuation of the property of the city and setting the property tax levy rate for 2021.
For this, we have Ms. Kraus again.
So this item was also reviewed on October 5th and November 2nd public hearing. It is consistent with the 1% as in the substantial need ordinance. That concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Ms. Kraus? Entertain a motion.
I
So
moved.
Seconded.
I'll take Ms. Farmer's tie move with Mr. Bulkey and second by Mr. Simpson to adopt motion number 745. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no hands, will all in favor please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries. We now move to ordinance number 746. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 746, adopting the 2021-2022 biennial budget.
For this, we have Ms. Kraus.
So this item has been reviewed with the City Council on a number of occasions. And the latest change, or this ordinance, includes one change, and that is adding $5,000 for payment for the Economic Development Board. So that increases our contribution from $20,000 to $25,000. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Ms. Kraus? Mr. Whalen.
Just for clarification, that's only beginning in 2022, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Kraus, I had A couple of questions as to where in the budget there is some investment around the area of fireworks. And so there was some, is there in the budget somewhere in detail, something about exploring and or funding a public fireworks display in 2022?
So the fireworks discussion and the committee falls under police department. We don't have a specific line item that earmarks funds for that purpose. However, with all work plans, the department will utilize existing resources to meet those work plan items.
So I guess the in our so that I wouldn't expect a public fireworks display to be a police department activity. I think there are things around fireworks that are police department activities, but when we were discussing that through multiple occasions, the idea of finding and investing in trying to find some sort of even limited public fireworks display as a tool was something that frequently came up. And I thought that in our very early discussions of this budget, there was some mention of that, but I couldn't find where it was, whether it was in Parks and Recreation or at all.
Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Councilmember Branstetter. So where you saw it, it's in two places. The first is in the budget message, and the budget message includes language to evaluate a potential Community Independence Day fireworks event in 2022. And then the second place is that will be developed by the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department, and we'll be reporting back to you on that in 2021.
So are resources for that in the 2022 budget?
There's
in terms of dollars?
Councilmember Branstetter, there's not funding in the budget to do the fireworks show. There is, however, there is policy direction to evaluate what it would take to put on an Independence Day fireworks show in 2022. And we'll be reporting back to you on that in 2021 to include what it would cost and where it would occur, logistically, vendor sponsors, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. And then on the other side of the fireworks question, the funding to do public information and education around the issues of fireworks that the budget as proposed anticipates the police department using its existing resources to work on that?
That's correct, Councilmember Branstetter, because all of that involves people. And we have the personnel that will be taking on that task. In addition, the city manager's office will be involved in that as well.
Okay, I guess that Mr. Mayor, my concern around that is that although we did our goal setting in March, after March, this council invested a great deal of time in exploring fireworks within the city, and that ultimately we adopted an amendment to the Lakewood Municipal Code that reduced the number of days that legal fireworks can be set off, although the action that we took didn't address or change the status of fireworks that are already illegal which were the fireworks that most people who voiced concerns either for safety or because of health and noise type issues were done. And that there was before us a recommendation from the Public Safety Advisory Committee that the route to successfully changing the culture had to do with a targeted and implied robust education program. And the estimate given to us by the police chief when we passed the ordinance about how long would it take to actually change the culture in the community regarding the use of fireworks was 5 years. And 5 years may be an estimate.
Mr. Branstetter, we've discussed fireworks at great length and adopted an ordinance. Is there an amendment you wish to make to the budget regarding funding something to do with fireworks? Because I don't know where this is going.
I have an amendment to propose once we have it moved and seconded.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the budget for 21-22?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Been moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Bulkey. Right, Mr. Branstetter, you have an amendment you wish to propose.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to amend the biennial budget to add $1,000 in each of the 2 years to be used for public information and education by the police department in cooperation with the Public Safety Advisory Committee around fireworks safety and regulations.
Okay, Mr. Caulfield?
Yes, Mayor.
Do you have an opinion on how useful that funding would be or whether it's necessary?
If I might inject a point of parliamentary procedure, I don't think there was a second to the proposed
Okay.
amendment.
Is there a second? Is there a second to the amendment? Seeing none, the amendment dies.
I was on mute there, sorry. I would second it for purposes of
Okay,
discussion.
okay. Mr. Whalen, the second on the amendment by Mr. Whalen. Then we go back to Mr. Caulfield.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And this is going to come back and bite me sometime in the future because I'm always appreciative when the legislative body wants to provide more funding in support of something. In this particular case, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because those resources are already included in the baseline budget for us to be able to move forward and follow council's policy direction that you provided to us earlier this year regarding community outreach and public education. It's not like it wouldn't hurt, but again, it's going to get done one way or the other, whether or not this amendment passes or does not.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the purpose of my amendment is I am concerned that just relying on the baseline budget and committing the level of resources that essentially we have been committing around public safety, education, and with fireworks, it tends to be a robust effort starting in late May and June, leading up to the 4th of July. First of all, I think that being satisfied that with that level of investment, it'll take 5 years to really get substantial change, and that it becomes immersed inside all of the other existing and to emerge public safety education requirements. And given that the PSAC in their recommendations to us, and although we didn't go along with their recommendation to not change the code, that the other part of their recommendation was that a focused education effort is what is needed in the community. I think having a specific piece in the budget that will allow the police chief and the PSAC to make an effort to reduce that 5 years to something less. And that's the purpose of trying to dedicate some dollars, a few in that regard.
Any other discussion? I have kind of an overriding concern. I don't think the council should be involved in $1,000 budget provisos, and philosophically, I'm opposed to micromanaging a city administration who have just committed on doing such a great job. And when the city manager indicates there's a flexibility in the funding that's already existing, I'm concerned that the temptation to be county commissioners and micromanage takes us out of our board role and moves us into more of an executive role. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Whalen?
I just want to agree with you on that. I think, again, it's good to have a little bit of discussion on these points. I'm going to trust the city manager that there will be adequate funding within the budget to do the education piece. I planted the seed that it would be nice as part of that education piece, and as we formulate policy collectively as a group, legislative body and the manager, that we think about how to fund and where to locate a public display, perhaps in 2022, 2023 down the road. And so if we can lead efforts, both education and to do a more of a civic presence down the road, again, not part of this amendment or part of this budget, I just want to plant the seed.
Right, Ms. Farmer?
I definitely see where Councilmember Brandstetter is coming from, but I really appreciate that view. I am not interested in seeing us add this to the budget now, simply because I'd like to do it the opposite. I would like for city staff to take a look at the situation and say, boy, you know what? I think we're going to need a targeted campaign. I think it's going to take 2 years. I think we're going to need $2,500 or $3,000. We're going to need some social media ads. We're going to need this, that, or the other thing. And then they can come to us after they've done their due diligence. Maybe they don't need to come with anything because it is in the baseline budget, but I'd rather hear that at that time.
And it may be that we need $25,000 or $50,000 to get a community event off the ground.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Seeing no further hands, I'd call for the question on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Hey,
Nay.
The amendment fails. We now move to the motion, which is to approve the 2021-2022 biennial budget. Is there any further discussion? I'll call for the question. Will all in favor please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Then we move to, motion passes. We then move to resolutions. Resolution number 2020-14, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2020-14, setting the City of Lakewood 2021 fee schedule.
And again, we have Ms. Kraus.
So this fee schedule was reviewed with the City Council on November 9th, and for this evening is the adoption. And that concludes my presentation.
There was one correction, was there not?
There have been no corrections to this. There have been 2 footnotes, and that footnote was for, actually there is one correction, my apologies. It's on the rental housing safety program. We originally had no charge for late, I believe it was sign up. And we have since modified that to be double the price of the permit. And then there was one modification to the outdoor vendor markets. We added clarifying language that it does not apply to the Summerfest events, and that would be done separately.
All right, any other questions from Ms. Kraus? Entertain a motion on the resolution regarding the fee schedule.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded.
It's been moved by Mr. Branstetter, seconded, I think, was Mr. Simpson, to adopt resolution number 2020-14. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed,
Aye.
nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. We now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
There is none, Mayor.
Is there any new business to come before the council?
No, Mayor.
And we move to reports by the city manager, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, good evening, council. First on, I'd like to call upon our strategic planning manager, Tiffany Spear, to provide you a snapshot of where we are with the coronavirus relief funds, as well as an emerging opportunity potentially with Pierce County. Ms. Spear?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Tiffany Spear. I'm going to share my screen. So as was reported to you last week, last Friday was our cutoff day for applicants to the city for coronavirus relief fund grants to submit all of their paperwork in order to get funding. And as of today, now that we've gone through all the paperwork that was submitted, you'll see up on the top here that we're going to be doing an additional $118,200 on November 23rd of disbursements. Where that takes us in this table that you see before you now is that out of the $2,685,000 plus total amount, $2,234,544 has been allocated to external recipients. That leaves some dollars available for the city. One thing that is still pending is the amount that's actually going to go to LASA. And then there are several other applicants that are going to take maybe a day or two to finalize because they're doing things like rental assistance or other deep relief, if lack of a better term, for residents of the city. So we're not quite done with the math there with LASA. And so by the end of this week, we'll be able to figure out exactly how much funding out of the city's allocation here is available for city costs. But the other thing is, as Mr. Caulfield just mentioned, is we just discovered today that there is an opportunity for the city of Lakewood to apply for funding through Pierce County for a share of its CARES funding for essential government services. And so we will be looking at some of the dollars for payroll, for instance, that has not yet been reimbursed to the city through its own grant funds, but would be eligible through the counties. And we we found that out this afternoon, so we haven't done the math yet, but we will be able to seek some additional funding through Pierce County this week. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Mr. Whalen.
So, Ms. Spear, with regard to that new discovery with the county's resources, could that or would that possibly reduce the $434,000 that we have for the city allocation through 11.3 that we could maybe reallocate, or would that be on top of the 434?
It would be on top of the 434. That includes some funding that's already been spent on IT and facilities costs that the city has had to spend in order to make the building COVID proof, if you will, as well as allowing for the new work situation with so many staff having to work remotely. So we would not be replacing those funds. And as of right now, it's really, quite frankly, too late to try to reallocate these funds to anyone. We just don't have the time to turn and distribute that out to anyone else before the grant deadline.
Okay.
And I might also add that, although I've been out of the loop the last couple of days, that the opportunity with respect to the county isn't a certainty. A lot of that depends on what Congress does. If Congress doesn't extend the deadline, which it very well may do, the county would need or would be highly motivated to flush out any unused funds by the end of the year. If the deadline is extended, that would change the allocation decisions. And so it's not a sure deal by any means. Ms. Spear, could you explain where LASA is? How much was allocated for the rental program that they were to implement, and how much has actually gone out the door compared to what is left?
They were originally allocated about $685,000. They have been reimbursed as of today a little over $278,000. That was their first request for reimbursement. And so they have about $406,000 identified in our grant program for them to allocate elsewhere. The difficulty for them is they aren't able to put that kind of money out on the street without being reimbursed by the city first. So we're kind of doing this revolving door, meaning they're going to use the 278 that they just received today for another push out to rental assistance. They'll ask for another reimbursement. We'll do that, and then they'll be able to do one more push. So we are hoping that with 2 more rounds with them, we will be able to disperse all of their $685,000.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Spear?
So I have it done.
Mr. Bulkey?
Mayor, thank you very much. So I want to understand this. So the 25th is right before Thanksgiving.
Correct.
And that is the drop dead date. Submitting its final reimbursement request no later than November 20th. So at that date, we'll know this is what they've got out on the street and this is what we owe them.
Correct.
Okay, so it wouldn't be, so $406,000, $407,000, and they've had, we're thinking I would guess there'll be something left, right?
They have, I believe, enough applicants to spend it all. It's truly going to matter.
Okay.
It's truly going to depend on how quickly they can turn the money around and disperse it.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Good. Yeah. And I'll second the mayor on that. With the county funds, it's if Congress does extend, but again, how many times have we said if Congress does, and things happen, then if they have more days to spend the money. Right now, the county has spent, as of the November 6th, they'd spent less than half the money that they'd been allocated. I don't know, they're on their way, but you get the idea how difficult this has been to move the merchandise. So there is money available, and we'll have the next weekly report on Wednesday. We get it Wednesday afternoon, and it's the finance director reports it out on Thursday to the council. So we'll have some idea, but we'll probably be around the halfway point, probably, and the 158 million. So hopefully there will be funds available, but the timing becomes interesting depending on if Congress kind of gets together and the spirit moves them.
Any other questions? Back to you, Mr. Caulfield. Thank you, Ms. Spear.
Thank you.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Hey, just like to add on to the whole issue of the coronavirus relief funds. So, trying to get $2.685 million out the door has been quite the endeavor. And, we've had a number of city personnel who've been involved in it. However, it's really been led by Ms. Spear as well as Becky Newton, our Economic Development Manager, and our Human Resources Coordinator, Brian Humphreys. I would like to plant the seed with the council that if further monies do come down to local governments for distribution in 2021, my recommendation is going to be that we bring on somebody to be dedicated solely for that. The reason being is because I need these staff to get back to their proverbial day job. And I mean, they've been doing, 2-3 times their workload, the past few months just to get this done. And at the end of the day, I need them back focused on, quite frankly, what your priorities are in other areas. The good news is that they're so good at what they do, they really haven't skipped a beat. But I can tell you that that's just not sustainable over a long period of time. So again, if we do get additional monies, I will be coming back to you with a proposal on how to leverage some additional resources. And we do have some folks, we just brought on an MPA graduate to help us out in development services. And so somebody like that could be serving as point. And by the way, it's not to say that these individuals wouldn't be involved, because they still would be. It's just that it wouldn't be their number one priority. They would then revert to a support role. So I just wanted to plant that seed with the mayor and the council on that. Just a friendly reminder that we need to get a video of all of you, and if you want to have your family members involved as well, for the virtual Christmas tree lighting. And so if you haven't already done so, please reach out to Shannon Kelly Fong to schedule a time to be able to do that in the next week or so. And because what we'd like to do is we'd like to roll that out to you as part of your December 7th council meeting. I think you're all aware that the governor, he announced yesterday an updated Safe Start requirements that's going to have an impact on our community and our economy. The restrictions actually take place today, and run through December 14th. I think, as you're all well aware, the reason for that is just the increase in rising COVID-19 cases that are occurring statewide. From the city's perspective, really 2 points to make. One is that at this point in time, these new restrictions that he's put in place really doesn't impact how we're currently delivering services, because the way that we're operating is already well within his requirements. And then secondly, the city's role will continue to be one of education. So that's kind of where we are. One of the things that we were talking about this morning was, okay, when is this all going to be over? And in the end, it's not going to be over until we have that proverbial herd immunity. And that means about 75% of the population needs to be vaccinated or have already gotten COVID-19 or somewhere in the combination. But really, vaccination is the answer. And for Washington State, there's about 7.6 million people in the state, and that means 5.7 million need to be vaccinated. Also, the vaccinations, it's going to be a two-step process, kind of like I'm at that age, I got to have the shingle shot, so it's, you take one and then 3 to 4 weeks later, you got to come back and you got to get a second one. So it's not 6 million vaccinations, it's double that. It's almost 15 million vaccinations that are going to be needed just in Washington State. Now, here's the good news. The good news is that there are at least 3 companies here in the United States that have developed vaccinations that they're beginning to roll out and to test and things along those lines. The other good news is that the effectiveness of those vaccinations are approaching 95%. And for comparative purposes, the annual flu shots that we get, they average either below or right about 50% effectiveness. So that's really, really good news. But there's still outstanding data that needs to be developed to make sure that that in fact is the case. Here in Washington State, the Tacoma Pierce County, or actually in Pierce County, the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department is actually responsible for developing and implementing a vaccination delivery plan. We understand that is currently under development, and once vaccinations become available, I'm sure that they'll be rolling that out. It is likely that first and foremost, that essential workers such as healthcare workers and first responders and people in those types of positions will be vaccinated first or provided the opportunity, followed by our more vulnerable populations, as well as those that are high risk on a number of fronts. The soonest that probably would occur would be sometime in first quarter or early second quarter of 2021, and then the general population. And that would probably occur later on in the summer of 2021. So what I'm telling you is that we're probably going to be in this phase 2, maybe a phase 3 environment for the foreseeable future. That's kind of our prediction at this point in time. But again, I think the good news is that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and that the healthcare industry is beginning to produce some vaccinations. And if we can get them out there, we can get over this hurdle and get over this pandemic, and then move on from there. Here in Lakewood on Saturday, we had our fall cleanup. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Kelly Fong once again for spearheading this, as well as our great partners at Waste Connections, LeMay Refuse, Lakewood Refuse. They did a fantastic job in setting this up and providing this opportunity. Also want to thank Councilmember Brandstetter, Police Chief Mike Zarro, and Community and Economic Development Director Dave Buer, and Human Resources Director Mary McDougall for coming out and volunteering and helping with that. The number of folks that came through was not as high in the past. It was still very, very busy on Saturday and Sunday, but I think there were several reasons for that. One is we just had one a couple of months ago. Secondly, it was raining pretty hard and gusty throughout those 2 days. And then lastly, I think people are still a little bit, shy because of COVID-19. But overall, it was a success. And now we'll move on and plan for our spring cleanup in probably in the May time frame or so. I'm also happy, actually very, very pleased to announce that our Public Works Engineering Department has secured yet another transportation grant, $2.3 million. It's a safety grant from the state of Washington in support of a segment of Steilacoom Boulevard that is currently under design and that we're doing right-of-way on. And that is the section between 87th and 83rd or Hipkins Road, full street improvements. And so based on the conditions of the grant, design would get underway probably the latter part of 21, 22, and then construction in 23 into 24. So just want to give you a heads up there and a congratulations to our Public Works Engineering Department. The Defense Community Infrastructure Program, or DCIP, a couple of things to report there. Last week, we learned that the Senate Appropriations Committee on the appropriations side has doubled down on that program and increased funding from 50 million to 100 million. That is something we have been asking for since day one. So good job there. At the same time, on the authorization side, we're trying to get some language changes. The good news is that this proposed language is in the House Defense Authorization Bill, and it includes language that essentially puts the I back in infrastructure and makes road projects to be ranked higher than the last round. And then it also proposes reducing the match, the local match, from 50% to 30%. So right now that is in conference committee between the House and the Senate. And we have a lot of champions on our side, to include Representative Adam Smith, who's chair of the House Appropriations Committee. So we have a lot of heavy hitters there. And so, knock on wood, we're cautiously optimistic that this will get reconciled and this will be placed into law, which will then help us for the next round of applications in 2021. We should know whether or not this is passed probably by December 12th or 13th, because that's when Congress is expected to recess and go home for the holidays, or at least that's what they say. I wanted to give you an update on LASA. So on two fronts. So very good news is that LASA has been able to secure some funds to buy another property adjacent to their existing properties. It's on Fair Lawn, And I want to thank our housing manager, Jeff Gum, for helping them with that in their application. At the same time, one of your legislative capital budget asks is funding totaling $500,000 to help LASA expand their existing facilities. We're still not sure what they want to do. And, right now they're heavily engaged in, getting out the coronavirus funds out to those who need help with their rent and the utilities and such. One of their ideas is perhaps tiny homes or something along those lines. So my concern is this. My concern is that when we meet with our state legislators here in December, or certainly when the session kicks off in Olympia, that we're not going to have a plan for how that $500,000 is going to be used, coupled with the monies that the city's bringing to the table as well. I'm not saying that it won't come together in the next week or 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but I think maybe LASA needs a little bit more time, and I'm willing to allocate some resources from the city to help them through that process, and then perhaps come back in 2022 for a funding request and a city participation based on something that's a little bit more concrete, rather than trying to, force things through right now. And so that would mean then, what do we do? And I think, as I previously mentioned, we are currently working with the county, and there might be an opportunity for the county and the city to work with some other providers to acquire the Fort Lewis Motel and have that transition into a local homeless shelter. And I can tell you that the folks who are involved in that can make that happen a whole lot quicker than how long it's going to take LASA, given all the work that they need to do. So what I would ask you, Mayor and Council, is kind of think about that. What I plan on doing in the next week or so is reaching out to LASA, and I want to have a conversation with the executive director and get her thoughts, because ultimately she's going to have to be the one that makes this pitch to our state legislators, since it is her project, and we're just running out of time. So I just wanted to kind of plant that seed with you at this point in time, and I'm hoping to have a more detailed update for you at your meeting next Monday. Just a friendly reminder that the Fallen Officer food drive is this Thursday from 6 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. over at the police station. Please practice social distancing, wear your mask, et cetera, and drop off your stuff if you plan on doing that. There's also a blood drive on both Wednesday and Thursday. However, I understand that all the slots are taken up. And then that is my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Caulfield, Mr. Brandstetter?
You muted, Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Caulfield, I was wondering whether we have reached out or heard from Councilwoman-elect Strickland as to whether they would be interested in continuing to utilize the space that we have allowed Congressman Heck's staff to use as needed in the city hall. And if that's, I think it would be good to have a place that such things can happen with the Congresswoman's staff or herself, if there's a need to do something locally. Just would wanted to continue that availability.
So yes, Councilmember Brandstetter, that's actually already occurred. Mr. Heck and his team has already actually reached out to us to see if the city is interested in making that space available to her. And of course, we responded affirmatively. And actually, that conversation occurred with the city clerk late last week.
All right, thank you.
We'll go to council comments now. Stay with Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that I would echo the city manager's comments that the fall cleanup this weekend worked pretty well. I took stuff there one day and was there helping greet folks the other. In addition to all of our folks that did well, I really thought that the LeMay Waste Connections folks were also really well organized and were interacting very well with all of our residents that took place to be able to go through and do that. That's really all that I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Ms. Farmer.
I wanted to provide just a warm thank you to the staff for all the work that they've done, not only over this year, but particularly over the past couple of months with the budget development and trying to get however many odd $1 million of coronavirus funds out the door to many deserving recipients. And all of this during a pandemic when everybody's just trying to make do and there's a lot of stuff going on. But this staff is of the highest caliber and always very prepared. And I'm just very impressed. So I wanted to give a shout out, Mr. City Manager, to you and your staff.
Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of words. Really, they're getting close to wrapping up the Onyx Drive project. I know we've talked about it a lot, but I drove down the finished part, the 95% finished part. It's been lined out, and I did it in the evening when it was raining. And I don't know that I've seen a more beautiful sight. I mean, I turned the corner off 87th and I'm looking down this stretch of road, sidewalks on both sides, drains great even in the hard rain, and lights all the way down. And I'm like, wow. I mean, I was, as corny as it sounds, I was almost moved to tears. I'm just like, all these years, and all the nights that I've left council meetings and I turn that corner and there's a few lights on the corner and then it's just pitch black. It's into the dark, into the soup. And it's just an amazing sight. And now I'm, I hear tonight my congratulations to the city staff and Public Works and on this grant for the next step on Steilacoom Boulevard, which and there's several segments on Steilacoom Boulevard, right? Down at the west end of town and down in the central part of the city, that it's really the last of the major thoroughfares that we have that still has significant amounts of work to be done on it. So that's just really exciting because it starts to set up things for 3-4 years down the road, it sounds like. So that's just wonderful. So there's not much we can do right now because we're basically out of CARES Act money. We've got to watch, but I think I share all our concerns about when I heard the new announcements or pronouncements come out about especially when it deals with restaurants and whatnot and gatherings, that this next round of getting through COVID is going to be very difficult. And it comes, my concern is that for a lot of businesses, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So hopefully we'll we'll get through this, and maybe with Congress's help or the state's help, we can get more help for our small businesses. That's all I got, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen.
My only comment is in line with that. I was hopeful that we might engage Becky Newton maybe to coordinate with Linda Smith at the chamber to figure out if there's anything we might do to help facilitate outdoor dining opportunities for some of the local restaurants. I had a couple of private folks approach me tonight. I mentioned it to the city manager that, you know, if there was any need to help design a schematic and help provide, you know, whatever permit opportunities, they would do it. If there was any labor that needed to be done, they'd help set up tents. It's a matter of trying to figure out how to coordinate communication for some of those restaurants. I'm thinking specifically of the corner up by the town center where you've got Applebee's and the other restaurants. If you could almost, you know, help them aggregate some space in front of the parking area there so they could put up tents and heaters and just get something together so they could survive for a period of time. That would be great. So I don't know if Becky might be able to reach out to Linda and say, hey, we're here. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know how we can be of help. That would be a good thing.
And actually, I'm meeting with Linda later this week, so I'll bring that up to her. But right now, those businesses, and we've had several who have come in to want to do that. And if they want to do that, we can help them through it.
Great. Because, and maybe, did we have a listing? I know that when the county came out with their 30% subsidy based on the COVID money, what a wonderful opportunity. But I don't recall if there was a good list of restaurants in Lakewood. I know there were some within the county that were identified.
There's 15 in Lakewood. It's in the city manager report, Deputy Mayor. There's 15 restaurants who have signed up. Yep. I think Applebee's is one of them.
Yeah, maybe a way to, I don't know what happens now. I mean, who's going to be able to eat? You know, and that's the problem unless you've got some outdoor dining opportunity.
Well, you look like you're eating okay, so
yeah,
I think.
Trying. So, got to do something to help these people. You know, I helped close a Ram restaurant in Federal Way, the Black Angus. I represent the landlord. That's closed here in Lakewood. There's some other stuff going on that's closing. It's sad. So whatever we can do to help.
Right, thank you. First of all, I would like to commend my Oak Brook oriented council member colleagues and all the predecessors on this council who have lived in Oak Brook all or part of their term on the council. So the city has been in existence over 25 years now. And more council members have come from Oak Brook than any other place. And we've improved Tillicum. We've improved Springbrook. We've improved Woodbrook. We've improved Lake City with Veterans Drive. And Taylor and Charlie has always been Oak Brook. And finally, nobody should be ashamed if the new street goes along their path home. Because the folks in Oak Brook have probably waited longer for city improvements than anyone. And we're, you know, thrilled, for example, when we finally were able to do a chip seal program. I never, you know, if going back what chip sealed used to be, I never heard of anybody being thrilled about a chip seal program. But I think the people of Oak Brook have been very patient, and the council members have always, from Oak Brook, have always seen that the city has other needs that perhaps weren't so provincially motivated. And I think it's a good time to stop and think that council districting in a city of our size might not be the best thing to do. We've had more of our minority members come from Oak Brook. So it's just a thought. With respect to the last week's SSMCP Elected Officials Council, we still had approximately 100 people participate. Pretty good turnout for a virtual event. We had some good presentations, an exceptional presentation, I thought, from David Trout, the fisheries director for the Nisqually tribe. And on the COVID front, I echo the Deputy Mayor's concerns, particularly about restaurants. I've been tangentially associated with restaurants through the family and back to when I delivered food in college, representing restaurants. It's a tough business. They're on the edge. And to make it even harder, contract tracing is showing that COVID really isn't spreading from indoor restaurant dining.
Right.
It's from social gatherings. And they're doing a lot to adapt. The county has spent 7 figures, more than a couple million, I think, on adaptations, additional money on PPE. The restaurants have been very compliant. And I think they're getting politically the short end of the stick. So if there's something we can do to focus on that particular niche in our economic enterprises in Lakewood, I think we should if we have another opportunity. And it's tough. It's going to get tougher for them. So on that happy note, is there anything else to come before the council? Then we're adjourned.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Night.